Subhanallah. Ya Allah. Allahu Akbar.
Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the World of Islam, coming to you from Manchester, New Hampshire, in the United States of America. From Denmark to China, from Australia to Argentina, from the USA to the UK, there are more than 1.5 billion Muslims in the world today. The religion of Islam is the fastest growing religion on earth, but unfortunately, the true nature of Islam is often misrepresented and misunderstood. So I invite you to join us as we travel throughout the world of Islam and give you the opportunity to know the truth about Islam and the truth about Muslims. You are now entering the world of Islam. And I'm in the Islamic Society of New Hampshire in the masjid here, and I'm joined by one of my brothers in Islam, Brother Joel Underwood. Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome to that.
And thank you for agreeing to sit with us and spend some time with us and share with us your story, how you came to Islam and how you were attracted to Islam. But as we begin, I want to know how you came to Islam, but I want to know a bit about your life before you came to Islam, before you started to study Islam, up to the point where you began to study Islam.
I suppose it's easiest to say I was a typical American who had been raised as a Christian of some variety.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely believe in God, and I was a serious person. When I was reading the Christian Bible, I would read it very carefully and critically and try to understand, you know, what it would offer. And from there, I sort of migrated through a number of thought processes, you know, as I grew older, trying to understand my life. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really have any exposure to Islam. Mm-hmm. I didn't know any Muslims.
Even when you went to college and all these things, you never...
I was not aware of it at all. I went to a college in the northeast of the U.S. that was predominantly white from the New England area. Mm-hmm. There was very little diversity in schools back then.
Mm-hmm.
And so my coming to Islam was really my own journey that came about in a way that I could never imagine.
So I think you explained it that you were kind of in complete isolation. You had never been exposed to Muslims. You had never seen an example of a Muslim. It just came to you. Allah, He just guided you to Islam.
It is something almost that simple, but I came to pick up the Quran before I was going to make a trip to Morocco.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I would find a little bit about the culture of an Islamic country,
mm-hmm.
so that I could be polite and know how to behave. I didn't know what the Quran contained. I didn't know what the message of the Quran was. I'd never seen the Quran.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent some 6 months before the trip
Mm-hmm.
Reading the Quran, going onto the internet and so forth.
Let me ask you about the Quran, because now this was 2 years ago or 3 years ago?
2 years, yeah.
And this was after 9/11.
Yes.
Everyone's talking about Islam and about Muslims, but still you had never really heard about the Quran.
Well, I knew it existed as a religious book,
Mm-hmm.
but I had never seen it, and I didn't know what it contained. I didn't know what the message of the Quran was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Christians have a sense of the books that are in the Bible, you know, the Old Testament, the New Testament. But I didn't know that the Quran would fit in with any of the history of the Christians or the Jews. I didn't know how it all worked together. And so I read through the Quran the first time, and because of the richness of the Quran from someone from the outside, they don't really know what the references are. They don't know what exactly they're reading. When you hear about the year of the elephant, well, what is that? Okay, unless you have some education about it. And so through time, I became curious enough, and I saw an advertisement by this society here in Manchester for a fundraiser. And I had no idea what I would find, but I thought this is a good way maybe for me to meet a Muslim and find out.
And before you saw that ad,
it.
did you know there were Muslims in Manchester?
Not really. I didn't have any awareness of them. There was nothing in the newspaper periodically that would give you much clue. And New Hampshire is, mostly white people from the Northeast, so it's not a very diverse area that way.
Now, when you came here, was that before or after your trip to Morocco?
After.
Okay, and how was that trip?
The trip to Morocco?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean,
which trip?
No, you said you were reading the Quran just to know a bit about the culture before you went on that trip.
Before I was going on the trip with my wife to Morocco. I made a separate trip to Morocco just this year. That's a different trip. So my original curiosity of the Quran was before, was of the trip going to Morocco with my wife, motorcycle trip.
Right.
So reading it beforehand, and then after what took place there with a motorcycle accident and so on, we had to come home early. And my interest continued. And then when I met some people here, I started to get some more sources of information to learn what books to look at. And I met some of the brothers here from the masjid who welcomed me to come to listen to some Quran studies.
And how did you feel? How were you received by the brothers here?
I was received just like anyone. There was no prejudice towards me. There was no like, what are you doing here? You don't fit in. What is your problem? What are you coming here for?
Right.
They were more than cordial. They were very welcoming and say, how can we help you? And very soon, from coming a few times, other brothers would say, how can I help you? Let me help you figure out your prayers, or here's something that I've learned. And so I couldn't have been received more warmly, actually.
So now you came here for a time, and you still weren't Muslim. You just came here just to better understand Islam, because you said earlier you're a serious person. So I guess you were taking the study of Islam seriously at that point.
Exactly. I was looking at it as, here's something that if you decide to become a Muslim, you have read and you know that that is a lifetime decision, and that you do not just try it out and say, I'm a Muslim for a couple of years and say, oh, well, that was too hard for me, and now I will go back to whatever. That is one of the big problems that most people have with religion, is they want to have cafeteria style. They want to only pick the parts that are easy. And I knew that that's not the authentic way. And so I knew the commitment that I would have to make would be a lifetime one, and that if I was going to make that commitment, I had to really feel very strongly. And so I spent the time learning and studying to where I was confident, to one day on my birthday, I stood alone in my home after having had a bath, and I gave my shahada, and I said to myself, I am a Muslim. Alhamdulillah. So every day I'm thankful for that.
Now, when you were considering becoming a Muslim and studying about Islam, did your wife notice a change in you, that you were becoming quite serious about learning about Islam?
Yes, with some concern, I'd have to say. I would have lots of books around. I would have the Quran. I would have other books on Islam that I was reading, and she could see that every day when I was in my reading chair, that's what I was reading, and everything she saw on the internet, it was about Islam. So she said, "Oh, you are really, being a fanatic about this. You're taking yourself in a direction away from me," and she became concerned that it would be threatening our relationship, that she wouldn't know who I was anymore, and these kinds of fears. And so that is continued to be an area of some difficulty that she is growing to understand, and that the acceptance of me now as a Muslim is actually improved a lot, to where she is willing to understand that I have this right to have my religion, and that it doesn't change my love for her, it doesn't change our relationship, should not threaten it.
And how about the rest of your family? Have you been able to share the fact with them that you're Muslim?
My children had no problem, and I was a little surprised. My daughter is very academic and studied a lot of philosophy and so forth, and she likes to find rationality in things and try to answer questions that way, and she was leaning towards being a Catholic in her own life. And my son is one who was just very open to people finding their own way. So both of my kids had no trouble. And I pray in front of them. They know at certain times, don't have plan things because Dad has his prayers. But outside of that, we have a family that, from my wife's side, Catholic going back generations, and for my wife to accept Islam, even if she had inclinations to join me, if we were just alone together on an island, I think she would. But she cannot face her parents. She could not face her grandmother and say to herself, you are following the wrong path. And she's not willing to do that yet. And that is up to Allah.
Inshallah, Allah will guide her to Islam.
Yes,
because
inshallah.
it just takes time, and we hear these stories, inshallah, when you talk about good people. Inshallah, Allah, He has a way to.
And patience.
And patience,
the Muslims
exactly.
are patient, and I'm patient, and the advice I've received from my brothers is like little layers of sand that fall to the bottom of the lake every year. It makes layers. You take a little bit of a layer each year of understanding. Maybe it happens faster, but over time, if I am a good example to my wife as a Muslim and I am treating her well and she sees what it is doing for me, inshallah, she will slowly lose these fears, and maybe, if it's God's will, she will become a Muslim too.
Now, you're from New London, New Hampshire, which is
Yes.
a little bit remote from here.
Yes.
Are there any Muslims that live in that town where you live?
I'm not aware of any. There was a grocer, an owner of a grocery store, who had married a Malaysian woman, and but they have moved south to be with family in, I think, North Carolina. There is one other sort of beacon, however, in New Hampshire, and that is Dartmouth College. And there is the Al-Nur Society of the Dartmouth students, and they have a prayer room, and they have meetings together, and they read the Quran. And they have welcomed me to come to some of their activities, even though, I'm 3 times their age in some cases. So there is a good community to the north of here, and we are making attempts to try to get them to talk together and be part of the greater Muslim family here in New Hampshire. But right in the town I live in, no Muslims, no mosques. And there is this isolation. There's an isolation, I think, for a new Muslim who has to learn an entirely new culture, has to give up their culture, has a language barrier, has the societal pressures of people against Muslims. You know, you are an instant minority, even though I'm the majority, and you know, so.
Now, the thing you mentioned about the things you have to give up to become a Muslim, were those things easy for you, and did you only start them after you became Muslim, or did you try to see if you'd be able to maintain them before you became Muslim?
I learned some of the laws about food and other matters, dealing with how do you relate to women and other things, other issues of modesty, and from my readings. And before I became a Muslim, I was observing these things. I was trying to learn about them. I had stopped having any alcohol, eating pork or any other food that was haram, and it was no problem for me. A whole lifetime of, you know, of things, but it wasn't difficult. And I have friends who are Christians or others who drink alcohol. They're not drunks or anything, but they drink alcohol, and I can be next to them, and it doesn't attract me. I have no problem with it.
But people who know you, I mean, everybody seems to be pretty accepting, but maybe somebody comes up to you and says, Joe, you know, I know you, you're a nice guy, but tell me, why did you become a Muslim?
I would say to them, that is a very small question with a big answer. And I've tried to have an answer, because that is the first thing people ask, you know, especially the people, like you say, that don't really understand. And I have to think about it. Well, no one asks anyone who is a Christian or a Jew, why are you Christian or Jew? How did you become Christian? Is it just something that is accepted? But if you become Muslim, now you have to have a very comprehensive answer that is logical and can be understood in 10 seconds. And I don't have a 10-second answer, but you don't know how God is active, how He is, you know, pointing you in different directions. You don't know when it is happening. And there are lots of blessings from God that you know about, and there are many, many more that you don't know about. And one of them for me is I've always had a yearning to have a better understanding of my Creator. That is just something that is in my heart, and I've been trying to find that my whole life. And through Allah, He has called me to Islam. Why? I would never know. Why would I do this? Why would I reach out to the Quran, something I knew nothing about? Why would I keep reading the Quran after all this time, you know, if it was just a whim? So I think my heart was ready, and it was this time in my life when Allah chose me. There's no other good, quick answer. You know.
Now, what's your occupation?
I am involved with finance.
Okay. And then how did your co-workers and everybody respond to the fact that you had become Muslim?
Well, the ones that had known me for quite some time, they raised their eyebrow, and they said, "Come on, what is this?" And they think, okay, it's just something that'll go away. And 6 months later, you know, I see them, or not everybody that I know I work with all the time. And so I have not had anybody like ridicule me or say you are crazy. They've been very tolerant of me and respectful. And one of my very good friends, who is ethnic Chinese, he is a born-again Christian. He is the most supportive of my friends.
Right.
And I pray at work, and there's nobody telling me not to do that, and I'm able to have privacy. And everyone, including the president of the company I work for, knows, and nobody confronts me with it or complains.
And as you mentioned before, that you're a serious guy. And if a serious person like you was not Muslim and was just to watch the news and read the newspapers, as it stands today, what do you think that the opinion of Islam they would come away with?
I'm sorry to say that it's the opinion that comes out quite often in the network news, where there's a very small amount of time spent on things, perpetuates a lot of stereotypes that the Western world is predisposed to believe. There are a lot of biases, there's a lot of ignorances that prey on the ignorance of Americans. I mean, Americans don't have a knowledge of Islam. They don't have a knowledge of the cultures where Muslims come from. And it's not that they have meanness towards them, but it's ignorance. So they are like fertile ground for some misinformation or some biased information to take hold. And so that is the only thing they know. And with the violence that is always on television, you get some sense that there is this group of Muslims who are violent. I think there is better understanding now that those people are not following the religion. These are people acting against Islam. And that there is a group of Muslims who are devout and religious people, and they're not violent. And I think the word is getting out slowly.
Okay. Well, I will ask you, because often I'm asked, when people think about Muslims in America, they think about immigrant Muslims, Afro-American Muslims, and they ask me why we don't see, since the majority of the people in America are Caucasian, at least today anyway, why we don't see more Caucasian Americans becoming Muslim. I mean, if someone asked you that question, what could you say?
Well, there's nothing specific to being a Caucasian American that would prohibit that. But there's, for example, within the Black American community, there is some cultural nourishment that would allow that. But in the white American community, there are no historical antecedents other than some immigrants from very long ago in the 30s that came to the U.S. There just isn't the knowledge of any Muslims. There's not an example where a typical white American is going to go to a school where there'll even be a Muslim. So it's really the lack of exposure. I think today the young people, my children, they get this exposure in their colleges, and they see that it is a world of people, not just one country. And their friends are much more diverse than I would have had a chance to meet, growing up. You would say, well, you don't know any black people. Well, there aren't any black people. It's not because I don't want to know a black person or I don't want to know a Muslim, but there aren't any here. And so in this part of America anyways, there's no proximity to an opportunity to learn. But I don't think that when you go one-on-one with a Caucasian American that there's any reason why you would find resistance to Islam.
And as you studied and learned about Islam, do you think there are things from Islam and Islamic culture that the society, the culture here in America, could benefit from?
Oh, there are lots of things. America is based on consumerism. And consumerism is beginning to really erode the society because it creates so much debt. To keep being a consumer, there's always this borrowing, and people's lives become caught up in that. And that is not always the best quality of life if you're working to pay bills and working to borrow money and just to have things. And most people, when they get to be my age, they realize that those things are not making you happy. They are not fulfilling. There will always be an empty part in your soul that is not complete and without your religion. The way women are treated in this country, there is a strong sense of...
Let me ask you, I'll let you elaborate.
Yes.
But, I mean, women around the world, when they think about women in America, they think they're the women who have the ultimate freedom in the world, you know? And they think that if they could live someplace and be a woman, that the United States is the place they would come from. So when you say the way the women are treated or the way the women are in America, some people might not understand that because we see that in America is the land of the free, women are free. How do you see that?
Well, I think the freedom that women have in America is multifaceted. There is the freedom to get an education, to pursue careers, that type of thing, to choose about family, life, and these matters. But so often what people look at when they say, oh, look at the American women, look at what they have, it tends to be a material item that they're saying, look at the wealth they have, or look at the car they can drive, or look at the kind of clothes they can wear. And I don't know that that's really a measure of freedom. I think women from other countries looking at American women, they're looking at a stylized dream of some kind, that American women, unless they're from Hollywood, you know, they still have very practical issues and concerns, and they've not reached any point where their cares in life are gone. They worry about other things. But the part of the culture that you asked me about that I think is a little disturbing is the way that women are used as, you know, objects to advertise things, and using them in a way that uses their sexuality rather than what is in their heart. And the women are portrayed like that a lot in American society, and I don't know that that is a good thing. As the example is, when the woman is coming down the street with a miniskirt, the young men are not looking at her inner goodness. Okay, and so as a Muslim, you are more sensitive to that, and you really think more about what is in this woman's heart, what is in her mind, what is she thinking. And I think in America, having, you know, when I wasn't a Muslim, I was susceptible to that same type of thinking. And
but let me ask you, I mean, in terms of women and your standard of beauty, has it changed now since you become Muslim? What you find beautiful about a woman as opposed to before you became Muslim? I mean, a complete beauty.
yes, I think that the outward appearance that a woman has is something that is unavoidable for a man. You know, if there's beauty, you are genetically predisposed to see it. What you think of that beauty is something else. Do you go beyond looking at the physical beauty, or do you think about that as a person, not an object? And I think the Muslim view that I've come to understand better is looking first at the person. Try to see the person, try to see who they are as a person. And the appearances that are the obsession of the West are not so important.
Okay. Well, Joe, I thank you for sharing your story with us. Alhamdulillah, that we travel around this country, we've heard many stories, and subhanAllah, there's some similarities, But the bottom line is Allah, He's the one who guides the people to Islam, and it's not the people who are given dawah, not the family or not the man who's trying to guide his wife or trying to guide his mother, but at the end of the day it's Allah who is the one who guides people to Islam. But before we conclude here, I'd just like to ask you, just your experiences as a Muslim and learning about Islam, what do you feel is the future outlook for Islam here in America?
Well, I have probably only a modest grasp of an answer for that, but I'm hopeful that Americans are becoming more educated to Islam, and the more they can meet Muslims in their schools. I think my generation and the older ones are going to be slower, but my children in that generation will be quick to begin treating people like people. There are many Indians in America that no one questions they're wearing a turban. It is fine. And soon, maybe the hijab. Maybe if the Muslim men take on their share and show they are Muslims too, wear the prayer cap in public.
Right.
But so often, people that come to this country who are Muslims, they want to fit in. They want to look Western.
Or to assimilate.
Yes. And you don't blame them for that because it is very difficult. For me, I am native of the U.S., and I am proud to show that I am a Muslim. But I will get my share of criticism as soon as I do that. I know. But that is improving, and it's coming with education. And look at this new masjid that we are building. That will be offering education, not just to the Muslims in this community today, but anyone who wants to come, and new Muslims or people like me who never were Muslim could hear about it. So I'm optimistic.
Okay. Brother Joel, thank you very much for sitting with us.